Okay, here we go. Good morning. So here is the rest of lesson 2-5. I know it's a different day for me, but so we're going to talk about some angle relationships today. So last video we talked about different types of angles, and this one's specifically going to be about the relationships between angles, and these are definitely important and things that you're going to want to have memorized. So we're going to start with the first two. There we go. So the first type of angle relationships that we're looking at are what are called complementary angles. And complementary angles are two angles with measurements that total 90 degrees. They have to equal exactly 90 degrees. So an example of two angles that could be complementary could be something like, so I'm just going to label this picture, call this A, B, C, D. So an example of complementary angles, again, you've got that box there telling you it's a right angle. And then just the measures need to add up to 90. So the measure of angle ABC could be equal to 40 degrees. And then the measure of angle CBD would be equal to, or would have to be equal to, I'm trying to add to 100. Oops. Degrees. 450. There we go. Would have to be 50 degrees in order to add to 90, because that's what complementary means. Complementary means that 90 degrees. They add to 90 degrees. That's what you want to keep in your head. That's what you want to think of when you hear the word complementary. So those two angles, angle ABC and angle CBD, are complementary because 40 plus 50 gives me 90. So that's complementary. Not to confuse complementary with supplementary, which is a similar kind of a thing. However, supplementary talks about two angles with measurements that total 180 degrees. These could also be called linear pairs. And that's because if we go back to that straight angle or a straight line, right? Straight lines or a straight angle has a measurement of 180 degrees. So supplementary will basically look like a straight angle when you add those angles together. I do need to make one thing here. It says two angles. Just make a note and let yourself know that it could be more than two, though. Could be more than two. You could have three angles that add up to 180, and that would still count as a supplementary relationship. So let's look at an example. So an example of supplementary could be something like this. If we have, let's call this X, Y, Z, and I'll call this one A. Those two angles, angle XYA and AYZ, those two angles, when I put them together, they form that straight line. I get that straight line or that straight angle, meaning that it equals 180. That could also make sense because notice, look at the little red mark here that I drew. This red mark looks like the shape of a semicircle. And we know that circles have 360 degrees. Half of 360 is 180, which makes sense because that's a half circle. So the measure of angle XYA could be equal to something like 120. And then the measure of angle AYZ would have to be equal to what if I wanted it to get to 180? 8, 7, 6, 60. So that could be 60 degrees. degrees, and those would be supplementary because they equal 180 when you add them, or when you put them together. And so, sorry. So what I mean by when there could be more than two, that could look something like this. You still have that straight angle, but there's more than two angles that make it be that way. So that there. So something like that. That would require 3 angles to add to that 180. You would need this one, then this one, and then that one. So it could be more than 2, as per that example right there. So 2 main important things you're taking away from this. Complementary means add to 90. Supplementary means add to 180. Those 2 main things that you want to be thinking about.